Thanks for your time. My name is Jim Alberque. I'm the GIS and Emerging Technology Manager with the City of Raleigh. Been with the city for about 7 years in kind of a variety of technology roles. One of my current roles is to manage the web team and work with great folks like Pete Weber. So I'll turn it over to Pete to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pete Weber, and I am the web administrator in the communications department for the City of Raleigh. I've been with the city for 7 years now, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about stakeholder engagement.
And hi, everybody. I'm Sally Shaughnessy. I lead the project management practice with Aten Design Group, and I'm also part of the lucky team that gets to partner with the City of Raleigh on this fantastic project. Thanks for joining us today.
So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Okay, we good? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Yes.
So we did introductions already.
Well, let's jump right into it then. Here in Raleigh, we like to call ourselves the City of Oaks. We like to say we're a city nestled in a large park. When you're flying into Raleigh, you see trees for miles, and then all of a sudden the skyline pops up and you're still surrounded by trees. As for location, if you're looking for a city vibe where the relaxing mountains and beach are 2 hours away, then Raleigh is for you.
So as I mentioned when I introduced myself, I've been with the city for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was up in the city of Boston. One of the things that attracted me to Raleigh was how quickly it's growing. It is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. So on the screen, you'll see some statistics from the UNC School of Demography. And what you see is between 2010 and 2016, 55,000 people moved into the city of Raleigh. Just for context, we have a town right next to us called Apex, North Carolina, which is not a small town by any stretch. And basically within those 6 years, it's the equivalent of the entirety of that town kind of moving into our city. So one of the statistics we kind of throw around is 72 folks a day move into the city. So that's the equivalent of a Peter Pan bus dropping everyone off and no one getting on the bus and leaving. So it's a very fast growing city, which applies some pressure on our digital services.
Sorry about that. The old "you're muted." So if you're looking at Raleigh by the numbers, our population is just under 500,000. With the surrounding jurisdictions, though, we have about 1.2 million people that come into Raleigh and use our services. The land area is about 146 square miles. And for employees, full-time employees are just under 4,000 and just under 3,000 for part-time employees. Most of those are seasonal in the parks department and around the pools and such. And then as a city, we operate with a $1.1 billion budget.
And so I'm not sure how many of the folks on the call are either in local government or work with local governments, but it's a really unique kind of industry. So and it's unique in the diversity of services that we provide. So if you think of it, some roles that we have include filling potholes, timing streetlights, delivering service, social services, planning for the future, kind of providing a safe environment for our citizens, both from a public safety perspective, but also the events they manage. We manage the green space in the city and programs around kids' education and recreation. So it's a really diverse kind of set of skills. We're not unique in Raleigh. We're like very many other local governments, but it's really, it's interesting. It's one of the things that attracts me to local government is just the diversity of the services we provide. And so that adds a challenge to providing digital services to our constituents.
And when Raleigh was ready to submit the RFP for this project, it was really clear that Raleigh had already made a significant investment in their digital footprint. So in the run up to this project, Raleigh had already completed a rebrand that broadly defined their digital strategy. They were super transparent in their RFP. And what we learned was that the RFP showed a thoughtful team. They invited questions and held a vendor call. They shared their strategy and brand artifacts with the competitors. And they invited vendors to meet with their entire team. And so this was a really thoughtful, comprehensive, engaging RFP process. And contracting is a story that Joe and I will tell forever. It took forever in classic public sector style. It took 5 months and it resulted in the most detailed SOW that we've ever witnessed.
Yeah, so one thing we realized is our site had really gained popularity by 2018. It became our #1 communications tool. In a 2018 community survey, 73% of respondents cited that our website was their #1 source of getting our city news. The second place people were going to find information was the local news media, followed by social media with 38%. And then in times of crisis, it was actually the media that was sending about 60 to 70% of our referrals to our site. So we realized we really needed an engaging site that had all of the information on news and services that the public would be looking for.
So Sally talked a little bit about some of the RFP process running up to the project itself and the contracting, et cetera. Some of the things that were motivators for us is we were using an alfresco platform, legacy alfresco platform. We had accrued a kind of a mountain of technical debt prior to the project. And we were so far in technical debt that literally we were unable to add any new features or functions to the site, that literally it was duct tape and baling wire to keep that thing running. And, you know, it was causing stress. I didn't share my video now, but I don't have any hair left. And the reason I don't have any hair left is during this period of time, I was up at night pulling out my hair because I was petrified that this thing was going to fall apart, and we just didn't have the resources to kind of get it back up again. In addition to that, we had been on that platform for a number of years, and Pete will talk about it a little bit later, but our content was so siloed and kind of locked in to kind of a very departmental centric organizational chart mirroring kind of model. And so this was an opportunity to not only refresh the technology, but also rethink the architecture and just how we were engaging with citizens, stakeholders, et cetera, delivering digital services.
So this is a logo that we developed, this one team, one dream. Aten really lives what we sell. We sell unfettered access to the Aten team. We believe in user-driven design. And so for that reason, our pitch meeting, when we met with Raleigh in the RFP process, it felt very much like our first working session. So some of our partners know what they want and need and just want to dive into wireframing and design. We are at Aten so immersed in user research and data-driven decisions, we would really love the opportunity to validate those assumptions. And the City of Raleigh team was also incredibly focused on delivering for users and agreed with the validation need. So we knew immediately that this was a good partnership. Beyond the work itself being a good fit for Aten, we knew that the partnership was a great fit for Aten. So much so that we developed this one team, one dream mantra to manifest this energy. And you'll see how it played out in the workflow and the project itself.
Yeah, and you know, we keep coming back to this kind of interview process that we went through. And Sally mentioned earlier that we had a very detailed scope of work. We didn't have that detailed of an RFP though. And the reason that we didn't was we wanted to give potential partners an ability to provide some creative responses to the challenges that we were having. I kind of described some of those challenges in the previous slide. But really, we were looking for a partner who was interested in our success. I know that, that's kind of a comment that you hear frequently from local governments and governments in general. But, we were looking for not just someone who had the technical capabilities and the experience to do this, but also who is going to be a good fit for the team. We have some really talented people in the city, and we wanted them to be fully engaged in the project. And so that's what one of the things that why we selected Aten is we thought we had a really good opportunity to mesh with them on the project, and just it would benefit the outcome of the project itself.
And yeah, if I had anything to add, I'd say, with all the pitches that we heard, it was obvious that anyone could do the job in terms of building a site with good UX design and site architecture. But what we found with Aten is that we aligned on why we were doing it. And that was, we shared a mission. It was to create and design for the people. I think we talked about all of our stakeholder groups in that first sales call with Aten. And so it felt more like a stakeholder identification session. We were already talking about the people that were going to be impacted by our site and the product that we were going to design together. And that just stuck with us from the start.
So I won't stay on this slide too long because we have this kind of cycling GIF. But as I mentioned, resources, we were looking for, or we found that we had resources on both sides that were very talented. And the last picture on the right kind of exemplifies that, which is, it doesn't matter whether we're the dog or the grandmother, or whether Aten is the dog or the grandmother. We're all going in the same direction, and we all get there a little bit quicker. So again, we think that the partnership was as much of a part of the success as any of the other decisions we made.
So as I mentioned, we're rooted in the belief that the best projects are built with input from end users. So it's critical for any organization, but especially public sector organizations, to demonstrate that end users provided their input and that we used their data to make decisions. So Aten has a thoughtful discovery process and a robust suite of services. And so for this project, we workshopped with the core team on who they believed their user groups were. And we supported that with a data analytics review to understand what the content was on the site and how it was resonating with their audiences. And we segmented and prioritized these groups. We landed on residents, investors, students, and visitors, but city staff wasn't overlooked either. The system needed to be easy to use by 100+ content editors. And so they absolutely needed to be engaged and thought of during the process. So every project needs a plan. We took our holistic roadmap and we identified milestones in the strategy, design, and development phases to engage all these user groups so that we could plan for these events well ahead of time.
So yeah, so this list is it. This is what we spent all of our time doing throughout the project, from the start to finish. It was all about listening so that we could build what the people wanted. Our stakeholder groups are pretty much consistent of everyone and anyone who may be coming to our website for information. Yet it was important to define them because that helps us figure out how to reach them so that we could then gain insight through their feedback in order to make sure that we're providing content on the website in a way they want to consume it. Right from the start, we did a kickoff tour. The assistant communications director and myself got in front of every single department director, assistant city manager, the city manager. And what we did was we started from the top and said, look, we need your content editors that are sprinkled throughout the city to be dedicated to this, because there is a lot of work involved. There's a huge content audit that's going to have to happen. And we really need them with their sleeves rolled up and engaged on this. And then concurrently, we had already started working with those content editors to start the content audit. We held weekly sessions with the content editors. And, this may be a good time to say that the City of Raleigh website, we started one because everybody started one in the 90s, and then it evolved into what it is. And, the different departments were slow to identify that. So we have varying degrees of technical expertise and content creation expertise in the departments. We do have some web content managers spread throughout the city, but we also have program managers and project managers and coordinators and and assistant park facility personnel that are all contributing to the website. So we had to change up our plan with them. We got in front of them and did focus groups and beta testing and card sorting, and we just came at it from every angle. We also did those the same group testing with external audiences, like our community neighborhood groups. That was especially important because in a city of our size, downtown, it's usually downtown centric, but North Raleigh is just as big as downtown, and we needed to get in front of those neighborhoods to make sure that we were designing for them as well. We did a survey on the current live site, and we also pushed that out on social media to get feedback. We did stakeholder meetings and then beta site demos with groups like our employee advisory group. That's a really good group. It's a cross section of the city because it's representatives from all 22 departments and offices that are in this group looking out for the employees. So it was a good cross section. We also have a program called Digital Connectors. This is one of my favorites. It's us taking underprivileged youth in the community and teaching them tech and how it can improve their lives. And then they in turn teach it to our older citizens. And so you've got that, we're running the gamut with getting in front of our age groups that way. And the digital connectors made us feel really good, the kids, because we were done in 15 minutes. We showed them the site and they told us why we designed it the way we did. So at the very least, we designed it for the future. We did content editor training, and this is where Aten came back in and really and got in there with us and trained all of our experts within the departments, who then trickled down and trained other people in the departments on content creation and using Drupal. And then they were there for us with our town hall. We had a town hall in the city council chamber where everyone in the city was invited to see the website and give feedback. Our marketing manager went before our management team meeting, went before our city council. It was great. Obviously, they approved the budget for this website, so they wanted to make sure it was everything it needed to be. So they really grilled her with questions, and she was able to navigate to the content and with ease. And just it was the moment we knew we had done it right. Throughout the whole time, we had informal communications to keep everyone in the city informed with our internal email newsletters and our intranet site. And then we also had information out to the public, to the media by way of press releases. And it was all about constant communication with all the different stakeholder groups, whether they were in the public or within the city staff. And, when I look at all the work that we did with these groups, I just get a great sense of pride in what we accomplished, and a little bit tired, but we really did get in front of everybody we could to make sure we were designing for everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Pete. Just to add on to this, Aten was shoulder to shoulder with Raleigh at all of these touch points, whether it was leading the outreach efforts or facilitating and advising Raleigh with ongoing communications data. I do want to elaborate on the content editor training just for a little bit. Like Pete mentioned, we came back to the City of Raleigh in person so that we could provide training for the various editor groups. We provided comprehensive documentation with how-tos. We asked in advance for common tasks and provided screencasts for finding and updating content. Further, like Pete said, we went on site, we conducted multiple editor trainings that was tailored to the type and level of editor access that you have, whether you are a power user or a casual site editor who may only be updating content a few times a year. Raleigh went so far as to designate trainers to provide ongoing support. So we did a train the trainer program so that we could continue to make sure that content editors were empowered, confident, and that made for a better end product for external users. So it's critical to engage the back end and front end users of the site so that we can increase adoption. Our site launch plan, site launch was actually just as thoughtful as content editor and all of these other engagement tactics. And I think Jim's going to walk us through the launch plan.
Sally, did you just say in person and on site?
I know. Remember when we used to be able to do that?
That's crazy. So, launch was really important to us. So my supervisor was the web manager when we launched the last site. And so she would bring me into her office and talk about the scar that the last launch left on her psyche around just some issues that they ran into. And so I was kind of bracing for impact during the launch. And so we were, I mean, I think we all were, it's not just me, I think the whole team was. And so we had kind of put together a very kind of thoughtful launch plan to help mitigate all the issues. And I'm going to let Pete kind of go into some of this stuff because I think he gets kind of excited about it.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, you know, with the first bullet there, 4 weeks of parallel sites. The easiest thing would have been to spin up a new site, sunset the old one, and be done with it. But we chose to have 4 weeks of both sites running concurrently. That's because we had to make some tough decisions. It was an election year for us, and there was a runoff, and we felt like we had to make sure that people could consume information as easily as possible from one of our two sites, and that shouldn't be a barrier during an election year. Raleigh's also one of the few cities that does an annual loose leaf program, and you better believe people want to know when their leaves are being picked up, and we needed to make sure that they had all the information about how to properly bag them and what the schedule would be, and how to not, you know, use the right of way, and everything they need to know. And it's an important time of year to make sure that everybody can get the information they need. So we decided to run both sites concurrently. But what we found is about a week and a half in, most people had voluntarily adopted the new site. And I think it's because it's so well designed, and we put so much thought into it, and we designed it for the people. And you know, we had the logistics of it all. We had it all planned out. We had emails ready to go. We had groups of people ready to answer the phones. We had dedicated phones and teams that were ready to answer any questions and help people through any problems that they may have. So we had coordinated all this. As you can see in that picture there, that's our war room from the night that we actually went live. And I do get goosebumps when I think about it, because we had poured so much time and energy and effort into this project. And, you know, we had people spread throughout the country. And I think even we had some people overseas that work for Aten. And, you know, as soon as they'd say, hey, we've got the site here in Denver, or we've got it in Boston, or we've got it in Miami. And of course we were the last to get it in Raleigh, but just hearing that and knowing that all of our work was going live for the world to see and digest was, you know, it was just moving. You know, you work so hard for something. So in the end, it went eerily well. We prepared for the worst. We had all our ducks in a row. We had our plans. We had communicated effectively with everyone, and it went well. And we did take time to celebrate. This picture is of our celebration party, and it's our core web team, and that's comprised of IT folks and communications folks that work so hard on this project. Except for that gentleman in the middle, that is the city manager, and he took the time to come down and congratulate us. And he said, look, I'm the city manager. If things go bad, I hear about it. And I heard nothing negative about this launch. So, you know, hats off to us. And it was a lot of hard work, and we worked really well with Aten and all of our stakeholders. And I think that's why it was so successful.
And in a conversation I had with the city manager on this night, you know, obviously he's fairly busy. I don't get a lot of opportunities to talk to him. He, the risk of a website launch was not missed on him. He understood the complexity of what we were trying to do. I think he had equated it pulling the tablecloth off the table while the table's still set. He understood it and understood that he anticipated, again, he was braced for impact at an elected official level. So he was ready for the elected officials to come to him about how we had ruined their constituents' lives and no one could find anything and everything was broken. But that didn't, again, it went eerily well. That did not happen at all. So a lot of kudos to the team. We're very lucky to have this team in this picture.
So the outcomes, I think at a high level, one of the most important things that we did was we designed a service-focused website in a way that people could easily find the information they needed about services. And we had moved away from the siloed departmental organizational flow of the old site. And so I think that's why this site is successful. Because we did design after listening to the stakeholders and they want to hear about the services that we offer. We created a sustainable and flexible platform that could meet all of our editorial needs, but also, I think Jim mentioned this earlier, we no longer had to say no, the platform can't support that. We now have a website that's robust and that can adapt as we uncover new needs from the various departments and content editors. And I really think that we've offered a really good way for the community and government to have a two-way conversation. We built a robust "Was this page helpful?" module, and it's pretty impressive to look at. I'd say about 45% of the comments we get are positive about how people found the information they were looking for. And it's always easy for people to say the negative, but to have that large percentage come at us and tell us good things about the site, that's really rewarding. And one of the things we did was we broke out projects from the services so that people can come and see all of the things that the city is doing to improve the infrastructure of the city. And with that, we have a project section that's very detailed, and it covers everything from stormwater projects to sidewalk projects, to playground, new playgrounds or dog parks. So it's good for people to see everything that we're doing for them. And then, as Sally mentioned earlier, we incorporated a new brand, which was a lot of work. And we used the website, the brand was new, and we used the website to kind of showcase the brand, knowing that it was our #1 communications tool. It was always also a good way and our #1 way of showing people what our new brand was and how it tied everything together.
So looking forward, one of the things that we wanted to try and do is go from a model of never releasing features and functions to a model where we would release them on a kind of predictable schedule. So we have been working with Aten on new sprint co-developing features and functions. That has gone fairly well. We have some growing pains in that area. It's new for us. But we have added new features and functions since launch. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, I think I would add that one of the things looking forward that came out of this website project is that core web team I spoke of, where communications and IT are aligned on what our priorities are around the website, and that we're working together to continue all of the work we did with the site development and migration. We now look at the future and try to figure out what we can do enterprise-wide that will help all of the departments on the website. And so we're putting a lot of strategy and thought into it, and it's good to have that camaraderie.
So we all know that a website is not a set it and forget it product. It's a living, breathing site. And so yes, our partnership continues today. Since launch, the site has won the 2020 Communicator Award. It's been a Webby honoree, and we're really excited to continue to innovate on this award-winning site. We continue to listen to staffers and end users. We continue to provide support and innovation for Raleigh. This is exactly where we like our Aten partnerships to land. Some partners have in-house teams, like the City of Raleigh, a really capable, talented in-house team, and we'll set those folks up for success. We're always here to help. But with the City of Raleigh team, we're also continuing to sprint every month together to do housekeeping, kick the tires, check under the hood, and to add new features and to refine things based on editor and external user feedback. So with the City of Raleigh, that one team, one dream mentality continues to live on today.
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway in terms of content is the content audit. I mentioned that we have varying degrees of expertise within the departments, and with that, there's a slow adoption of responsibility for the content that's just kind of been thrown on the website for 20 some years. And so if I could say anything, it's never too early to start looking at your content and auditing it, looking to see what content is stale, needs to be rewritten, what can be omitted altogether, what new content needs to be added, and writing, for ADA compliancy and for readability and at the 7th grade level so that it's digestible by a majority of the public that you're serving. I would just say it's never too early to start that content audit, especially with a site the size of Raleigh's.
I'll echo what Pete said. Content migration was a major learning for us. We knew that it would be a big lift, but it was even bigger than we thought. The takeaway is that it is a lot of work, so give yourself a lot of runway. Do the automated migration, test it again, and engage the content editors and block their time to make sure that they're getting all the content into the new site, the items that aren't part of the automated migration, the stuff that we're writing from scratch or revising or doing manually. Make sure that everybody has the time that they need to do it and do it well ahead of launch. And make sure that you've got time after content is in to do a full end-to-end testing. Let's make sure that you're set up for success to hit that feature complete milestone and launch successfully. So those were our big takeaways. And it ended up working out great in the end. I think it was just one of those things that, it took longer than we thought, but we still made it and still it turned out great.
And then go and celebrate, right? See if you can get somebody to buy you a drink for all the great work you did. Yeah, so that's the end of the presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Joe, for any questions.
Oh, fantastic. We've got a few questions here, and I'm sure that there's some other questions that'll be coming in. So I want to just give everybody an opportunity to get those questions into the Q&A button. And while you type in those questions, I just want to let everybody know that you should save the date. We typically do the Aten lunch hour on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of the month. We're in December, so the 4th Wednesday of the month is going to coincide with Christmas week. So we're gonna hold off on that. Our next webinar is going to be Wednesday, January 13th. It will be conducted by Nikki Singer, our UX expert. We're going to talk about the value of card sorts, how to conduct a card sort with your team and stakeholders, and how to interpret the results from the card sorts and how it can improve your website. We'll be sending a link out to that talk along with the video, but you'd also take a look at other upcoming webinars that are coming up in Q1. And with that, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. I'll keep my video on, and I'm going to start asking some of the questions that we've seen. So the first question is, was the One Team, One Dream for internal communications, or was that an external communication, or both?
Go ahead, Pete.
I'll kick this over to you.
Sorry,
I should have said your name.
No, that's okay. We used it pretty extensively internally. It added a human factor to what we were trying to sell to department heads and program managers and people who we were asking to have their teams dedicate time to this project. So we very much used it internally quite a bit for that human aspect.
Mm-hmm. It was pretty fun. We branded cards actually at the town hall, just so that folks could get to know Aten a little bit and really understand our mission and our partnership. And so we branded cards, and we actually put on the back of the cards what would make this project successful for you. And so when we were in the town hall, we weren't just talking at people, we were asking people to come and talk with us. And so we had everybody actually write down what their key success metric was, or their concern or their aspiration for the project. What was the one thing that needed to go well to make this project a success in your eyes? And that was a really dynamic conversation to have with people. We had them posted on a board at the town hall so that everybody could see and be a part of the process in the upfront. So that was really exciting. And so that was I think the biggest, broadest announcement of One Team, One Dream was at the town hall.
Awesome. Awesome. I know that just outside of the realm of this particular project, One Team, One Dream it has become an Aten mantra that we say almost daily, if not many times a day. So this engagement with Raleigh has helped us inform other engagements across the board. I'm going to jump on to the next question. What steps do you take to balance resources, time, energy, funding between the immediate needs of the community versus the long-term needs of the city?
So I'm happy to take a crack at that. This is actually something that we talk about, I would say, weekly in our meetings. So we try and balance like requests and try and understand what is the short-term value, long-term value. And then there's this whole PR and marketing around who's making this request and the value of implementing this request just from a coalition building perspective. And so some of the strategies that we use are is during these stakeholder engagements, when we hear requests for features and functions, we try and be as transparent as is appropriate. So trying to share with people what is the cost, either dollar-wise, feature-wise, or time-wise. And then make sure that they're clear on that. And then also provide some recommendations to them on how we deal with this request. So, again, this is something that we're learning and we're getting better at all the time, is if there's something that's a short-term request that is not in alignment with our long-term vision, we try and share, we try and sell the long-term vision as a way to discourage the short-term feature.
That's actually, I mean, that dovetails into, I think, another question. Well, I guess a variant of the next question, which is, some stakeholders will have some feedback or some input that's not quite on point. How are you managing that?
So Pete's excellent at this, so I'm going to let him kind of.
Yeah, so the key really is consistent communication with all of your stakeholder groups and looking for trends. A one-off from somebody, it may be important, but until you hear it from a few other people, it doesn't hold as much value. And so really it is about, and that's why we got in front of so many different people and so many different groups. There isn't like a magic or a silver bullet of stakeholder that's going to be able to give you all the answers. And so it's just about constant and consistent listening, two-way communication, and just asking the questions to kind of dive into what it is they really are asking for. So it's a balancing act. Communication is key to any relationship. So.
And for this project, rather than going top down, bottom up, we decided to go burn the candle on both ends.
Right.
And we tried to go both ways into the middle. And again, we oversaturated the organization with communication.
All right, awesome. I'm going to, I see there's some more questions coming in. We actually have time if anybody has some questions or follow-ups, we'll have time to go through them. We still have another 20 minutes to the top of the hour. So we're here until the last question is exhausted or the hour is exhausted. Just dovetailing on that is reluctant stakeholders, folks that don't see your project as their priority. Did you have to chase anybody down to get feedback from them? And if so, what did you do to do that? And I see, Sally, you just unmuted yourself, so I'm going to kick it over to you.
Well, one person that comes to mind, I wouldn't categorize this person as reluctant by any stretch of the imagination, but I will say that there was apprehension around the launch plan, around convincing users to move from department org to service org. And we relied on our project planning and our stakeholder engagement to validate that this project was really going to be successful. We did everything in our power to make it successful. We engaged, we listened, we have a thoughtful plan, we covered all of our bases logistically. And so it was really about having frequent communications with these folks just to reassure them that we've thought of it. We have plenty of runway to do testing to make sure that it's not going to break when we launch, and that the user journey mapping and all of the stakeholder engagement that we did really did validate the decisions to move to a service-based model. There was, if Pete and Jim want to talk about this, I know that even before Aten came to the project, we were very clear that we were going to move to a service-based model instead of having just department landing pages. And there was a lot of work done and road showing done and selling by the web team to tell people that this was the way of the future and the way we needed to go for end users. And so I think Aten jumped on that train as well to continue to reassure people that these were the right decisions. In the end, like Jim said, and Pete said, there was such a quick adoption that I think we didn't need to sell it after we went live. The data proved it.
I want to kick this over to Jim and Pete, but I want to put a little bit of a spin on this question, which is, you know, the city had to move from, it was moving toward a service first model. And I think a lot of municipal sites go from like a department organization for their sites to the service, to a service or a user-centered design piece. That's a huge shift for the organization. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, you know, any challenges that you had as you were sort of helping people reframe the website and their mental model.
So whenever we'd go in front of a group, you know, at the start, they didn't know what their own services were, you know, they never really stopped to think, what is it that we're offering the public? And so just by sitting with them and having those conversations about what it is they do for the city, it just kind of light bulbs went off. And you know, because we did hit management level and middle management and, you know, content editors and from every angle, and we got in front of all kinds of stakeholder groups. I mentioned the employee advisory group. It's not like everybody in HR was hearing the same story as it relates to their department. They were hearing how this project impacts them and everyone else that works in the various departments, regardless of what department it is, and that it's much bigger than them. And I think that helped them adopt it, because it wasn't like we were singling them out and we were, you know, saying to this particular department, this is the way your content's going to be. We were showing them that this structure was for everyone and that it would pay off in the long run, because we were putting the content out there in a way that the public wanted to consume it. Well, not just the public, but the people, you know, a lot of our traffic is internal. It's people that are looking at their own content on the website to see, you know, what's out there. You know, everyone in Raleigh water doesn't know what the water quality reports look like. They go to our website to find them, to get them, to have that information. So I think they just, by just showing them how it was a global process and a global structure that we were creating for the website. And I think that helped people buy into the idea or the concept of it. It really was like, the key takeaway is to get in front of everybody you can with the same message, so that when they're out and talking to friends in other departments, they're all hearing the same thing.
And just from an organizational perspective, even before we started to engage with folks individually, we knew, right? If your organization is anything like ours, you already know that there's a handful of folks and you can name them and you can put their names on paper. And so we did that. We actually had like mitigation plans around department manager X. We know that they're gonna, it doesn't matter what we say to them, they're just gonna potentially be a challenge. And so let's come up with a plan, an engagement plan around them specifically. And so we did that for, I would say, you know, a half dozen to a dozen staff around the city.
Awesome. So I'm going to, there's a great question here, a very practical question about, did any city departments express feeling constrained by the site design templates? And if so, how did you manage that? This is a great question. I think a lot of people who don't build websites themselves will think every aspect of the website is completely configurable, when in fact, you know, a part of is making those configurations at the outset. I'm curious about the feedback that you saw internally. So Pete, you're the only one who's unmuted, so I'm going to kick it over to you.
Okay. Well, we, you know, like Jim mentioned, we had ideas who we were going to have to have that deeper conversation with. And so we got together as a core web team and went ahead and, you know, did mock-ups, and we did like strategy around content and what it would look like to rewrite it and what we would omit and what our services would look like on the site, and actually went through and mocked that up so that people could see it. And I think, you know, most people are visual. Like if they can see something, it helps them understand it or comprehend it. So we took the time to do the extra work to build the mocks and the plans and those are the people we actually got more involved in just some of the bigger conversations about the organizational structure of the site and got their buy-in that way as well. But you have to take the time to, out of respect for them and understanding what their concerns may be, to do the work, to put the presentation in place that's going to help win them over.
And I would say we run into this. We ran into this all the time, right? So this is, you know, I'll pull out a department, the Parks Department, and they had a list of features that they had been asking for on the old site, you know, while we couldn't make new features available. And so we were able to accommodate some percentage of those with the site launch, but we were not able to accommodate all of them. And so I got to give Pete and his team a lot of credit. They had individual engagement with parks after launch, where they tried to understand not only the features they were looking for, but the goals of the features that they're looking for. Why do you want this feature? What is this? And Pete and other folks on his team came up with big overarching strategies that weren't just for the department, right? So an example is alerts. So we need to do something around alerting for citizens around park closures, canceled soccer practice, those sorts of things. Well, we have a whole bunch of other alert needs outside of the Parks Department. Let's understand what the goal is. Let's understand some strategies on how to do this kind of enterprise-wide. And then they were willing to be flexible on time frame. So we were, you know, it ended up being a little bit longer transaction because we were trying to do something a little bit bigger than just the department. But that, you know, that's a success story.
Awesome. There's a lot of questions coming in, and that's really exciting to see. What was the time frame for this project?
I'll jump in on that. So the time frame for the project by the Aten roadmap was 9 to 12 months long. But I will tell you that Jim and his team drilled it into people's heads and said 12 to 18 months. 12 to 18 months. So whenever I was in Raleigh and I got to meet, you know, the CIO and everybody, they said, Sally, this is 9 months, right? And I said, Jim won't let me say anything but 12 to 18 months, 12 to 18 months. And so that's what we said for the project in full, and it ended up being 12 months. So, so that's where we landed. And we did delay it a little bit. I think we could have gone live a little earlier, but like Pete said, there was a runoff election and there was a lot of stuff happening in the city. So we made the executive decision at the 11th hour to hold off on site launch for a few weeks, just to let city news smooth out a little bit, so that we didn't want to pile on to a very stressful time in the city. So we could have gone live a little earlier than we did, but making that decision to smooth it out actually just gave us more time to do QA and content refinement ahead of launch. So it all worked out well.
Awesome. So I'm going to move on to the next question. So question from Lucy. Actually, I know you. Hey, Lucy. It's impressive that you got so much feedback during the design process. What feedback mechanisms / groups were most helpful? What do you wish you had done more of acquiring feedback? And actually, I think that dovetails into the next question in the list, which is, if you could tell yourself one thing at the beginning of this project, what would you say? So what were effective feedback mechanisms and groups, and what would you have done differently if you could do it all over again?
So I would say, and again, I'll defer to Pete a little bit on this, but I think that there was no one mechanism that was the right mechanism for that feedback. So as Pete mentioned earlier, we did things like went out and met face-to-face with a lot of people. We were in front of them, which I think really helped on the coalition building side. We did get some feedback, but it also helped build the coalition. We did surveys on the website, on the existing website, and so we got a lot of feedback there. We did all the card sorting stuff. I know you're going to do a webinar on card sorting, but we had a whole bunch of engagement around card sorting. And then we had focus sessions with live focus sessions with content editors, etc., which we got ad hoc, a lot of really good ad hoc feedback. So I don't know, Pete, if you'd say you had a preference on one of those channels over the others.
I think my favorite channels were the ones where it was a cross section of people. So like Digital Connectors was a cross section of ages, and the Employee Advisory Group was a cross section of employees from the city, from different departments. But I feel like when you've got the cross sections, the people are looking at the website and the information that you're providing to them and testing it more from an end user perspective than what they think their organizational needs are. So I think we got more honest, real feedback that way from those cross-sectioned groups. Mm-hmm. Where if you go in and talk to the parks department or, you know, to housing and neighborhoods, everybody in that room has already heard what their organizational structure is and how they think the website should be. And it, you know, when you've got the cross sections, people start to see it as an end user, and that helps them make the leap, but it also gives you more earnest feedback about how they're using the site.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that I would add to this is things that jump out at me were the card sorting with the Concerned Citizens group. We had a small but mighty group of really vocal, passionate residents. They know the city, they know what city residents want. We talked to them frankly about low information users. If you were speaking for somebody who just moved to the city, what kinds of content would you need? If you were a student who's only potentially here temporarily, what do you need? These are folks who know their neighborhoods. They know the information that their neighbors need. That was a really meaningful conversation with that group. The other thing that was most helpful was true in the content editor training. Because we knew that the key to success would be keeping content editors happy, I think it was really helpful to designate train the trainers. I think it was really helpful to ask for common tasks by power users and casual users so that we could tailor our training. So hearing from them the most frequently completed tasks or the types of content that they're updating all the time, listening to that and helped us get the training right out of the gate. So that was really helpful. Yeah, I think that's it. Like, I think we did a smattering of everything between surveys on the site, focus groups, card sorts, journey mapping, and we did accessibility consulting, which was a big deal, how to make PDFs accessible, how to write good content for accessible websites. So we covered all of our bases so that we could make sure that everybody felt informed and confident.
So Joe, before you jump in, I really, really like that question that you had posed that we didn't answer, which is there anything we would tell ourselves at the beginning of the project? And Sally, since you were just talking, I'm going to put you on the spot. I think that's a great question. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I think it's a great question.
So start the content migration script writing in April, not June. That comes to mind. That was a big one. Yeah, that I think was my biggest learning. Other than that, I don't know. It felt like it was, I think we knew what we were getting into from day one. So I don't know that there was a lot of hindsight to be had for me personally. The roadmap changed, but it didn't change too much. I think that the city was fantastic about telling us up front that it was an election year. I mean, we went down to risk mitigation plans with Nancy. Remember, we were talking, Nancy saying, Sally, we're going to be building this during hurricane season. Prepare for us to shut down offices for a few days if there's a big storm. I mean, we ran all the scenarios up front, and we had a plan in place for everything. So I don't know that there was anything that we didn't anticipate.
Pete, do you have any feedback on that one?
Oh, we already talked about it, and that's the content audit. Start it 3 years ahead. If your site's as large as ours, go ahead and start. Just always be auditing your content, which you really should be doing. And that's one of the things we learned from this, is that we need to keep the onus on people within the departments to manage their content, and not to be afraid to do that, and that it should always be evolving. You know, policies, procedures, plans, services that the city offers, they're different than they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So if you've got pages that haven't been touched, you're just not doing your job at keeping the public informed. And as an aside, I'd like to say, this didn't all stop with launch. You know, we're continually working with people. As I mentioned, we have our core web team that's always working together, but with the content editors, I do a monthly web lab where we're training them on some new feature of the website. Or, you know, we may be looking and saying, all right, well, what are our paragraph content types? When's it an appropriate time to use each of them? Or, you know, what's the strategy around using the service content type versus the support page content type versus the news content type? And I also, you know, we just had a big birthday celebration because the site's a year old. And we actually used some of that feedback that Sally was talking about from the town hall. I repurposed that, and I brought up all their comments again a year later with a bunch of balloons. And, you know, I think that helps to build trust in what we're continuing to do. And that, you know, it didn't end with launch. And I think that's an important thing to say.
Awesome. Well, we are, we are at time. So I think that'll be our final question.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.